What's going on, everybody? My name is Michael Weir, and today we are talking about Don't Worry, Darling. Don't Worry, Darling is directed by Olivia Wilde, and it is a mind-bending, twisted movie that I had a really fun time with. But before we even get to the movie, there was a ton of drama surrounding this movie. At first, you had Olivia Wilde calling out Shia LaBeouf, who was originally cast in the role that Harry Styles ended up playing, and Shia LaBeouf walked away from that role. Well, she came out and she's like, I fired him, and I had to fire him because he was toxic. And then he had receipts, and he had video evidence, and he was like, no, I wasn't toxic. I mean, I was kind of toxic, but I walked away on my own free will. I wasn't fired. Here's the receipts. Oh, also, here's the video where Olivia Wilde calls out Florence Pugh. So here's everything I have. Well, then it looked like Florence Pugh and Olivia Wilde had problems, which created more drama. So then they get to this festival where they're showing the movie. The whole cast, this picture in particular, just looked like they didn't want to be there together. And then you had the spitting incident where did Harry Styles spit on Chris Pine? Chris Pine's camp says, no, they didn't. They're best friends. But that video definitely looks like there was a problem that night. I'm not sure. Make a decision for yourself. The point is, there was a ton of drama surrounding Don't Worry, Darling, and then the critics bombed the hell out of this movie. I think right now it's currently sitting at 39% on Rotten Tomatoes by critics and 81% by audience members. Now, I consider myself an audience member because I don't line up with those critics most of the time, and I will say I agree with the audience over the critics in this case, because that 39%, that just seems like they were upset with all the drama. Because if you watch this movie for just what it is for the movie, I don't understand how you couldn't have a great time. I had a really fun time with this movie. Let's get to the review.
I don't trust him. And I don't want to be here anymore.
And so, guys, Don't Worry, Darling, like I said, it's directed by Olivia Wilde. It also stars Olivia Wilde amongst other stars like Florence Pugh, Harry Styles, Chris Pine, and Ruxin from The League. Nick Kroll, there's his name. I'm going to leave that in there. The movie centers around all of these characters living in a town called Victory. It's kind of unspecified where they're at. They're in the desert somewhere. My wife and I kind of theorized that maybe it was Arizona, New Mexico, somewhere. That's the landscape. That's what it looked like. So they're out in this desert area in a town called Victory in like the 50s or 60s. Everything has that 50s, 60s vibe to it. And they're out there because all the men in this town are working for Frank. Frank is played by Chris Pine. Chris Pine's character, like I said, he's in charge of the city. He's like the de facto president of this city because he owns the corporation that all the men work for. And back in the 50s and 60s, the men go to work for 8 to 10 hours a day, and then they come home at the end of the day. They expect a drink in their hand, food on the table, and their wives to be very pretty. That's what they expect. And so that's what this movie is really about. It's about, while the men leave, what the women do while they're home. And so you've got Florence Pugh's character who goes to dance class, and all the women go to the dance class in this town, or she goes shopping and all the women go shopping in this town, or she stays home and she cleans the entire house and she makes dinner and she gets it ready, and that's her life. That's how she's living it. And she notices weird things along the way. And I don't want to spoil anything in this movie because there's some twists in this movie that are really good. So I don't want to spoil anything, but I can talk about things that were in the preview. So there's at one point where she is going to make some eggs, and she takes out a batch of eggs and realizes that all of them are empty. Every single egg. Now, she doesn't know why. And I can't tell you why, but she notices little things like that. Or she'll be cleaning a window and she'll start to feel the window closing in on her, like starting to crush her, and she doesn't know why, but it's doing that. Now, at the same time, while all this is going on, there's a woman in the town named Margaret. Margaret catches Florence Pugh's attention because everybody thinks she's kind of touched in the head ever since she lost her child out in the desert. They say, listen, this isn't a very safe area. If you stay in the town, you stay with the women, you're very safe. But if you go too far out, you will not be safe, so please don't go out there. The woman walked out there with her son, and when she woke up, the son was missing. The son was gone. And Margaret is now kind of messed up in the head. So while the women feel bad for her, they also think she's a little messed up. So any of the crazy ideas she has or the things she says, they don't take them all too serious. Because of these weird events in the movie, like the eggs cracking, the glass getting closer on Florence Pugh's character, Florence Pugh starts to wonder what is going on in this town. She starts to wonder a little too much. She starts to think, you know what? Why don't we ask the questions that we should be asking? Why didn't we believe Margaret when she was around telling us things? What is going on around here? And those questions lead to big problems. And that is all I can tell you about Don't Worry Darling, because if I go any further, I will start to spoil stuff, and I would have hated if someone spoiled this movie for me going into it, so I don't want to be that guy. I do not want to spoil Don't Worry Darling for you guys. So at this point, I'm going to cut off the synopsis and say that's your setup. If it sounds exciting like it did to me going into the movie, I would definitely recommend you go check this movie out in theaters. With that said, let's get into my likes and my dislikes, and then we'll move on. The first thing I like about this movie is the performance that we've received out of the actors and the extras. Say what you will outside of this movie with all the drama going on behind the scenes, but in this movie, Olivia Wilde was able to get a great performance out of every single person, and most importantly, not just a great performance, but a believable performance. I kind of believed that Harry Styles and Florence Pugh were together. I believed in what Chris Pine was saying the entire time. I believed Olivia Wilde and Nick Kroll's relationship, and I believed that there was something under the surface there that Olivia Wilde didn't want to tell Florence Pugh. I believed in all of that, and you feel it the entire time. So the performances given by the actors, the direction that Olivia Wilde was able to put these actors and actresses in was great. So overall, the performance by these actors and actresses and by the direction by Olivia Wilde, I really loved. The next thing I really liked about this movie is the great, intense storyline. It really is. This movie, from the previews, had me thinking, okay, what's going on with this movie? And they give you little tiny pieces throughout the movie as to what's going on, and you just eat it up the whole time. Like, if I'm sitting back in my seat like I am right now, by the end of the movie, I'm like all the way up in my seat wondering what is about to happen. And a movie that can do that, a movie that can grip you, that's a big deal, because not a lot of movies can do that. A lot of movies is just like, okay, I kind of saw that coming 30 minutes ago. It makes a lot of sense that that's happening now. And this movie didn't do that. This movie consistently pushed me to the edge of my seat, wondering what was next, rooting for different characters who are trying to get to certain destinations. You root for them, and it's got a great twist toward the end of that movie, which would be my third like of this movie, is that twist. There's a twist at the end of this movie that I did not see coming. Like, I expected one thing, and I was right about that one thing, and I looked at my wife and I was like, I was right. I knew that was happening. But then something else happens, and I was not prepared for that. I did not expect that. It was a really cool concept. And it makes this movie almost a different genre of movie than just a thriller, but I can't tell you what I think that genre of movie is without spoiling it. So if you want to talk about that, we'll talk about it in the comment section down below. My only real negative for this movie are the unanswered questions. There are a lot of unanswered questions. The movie has a very ambiguous ending, which I liked. I didn't dislike that. I like when a director can say to the audience, okay, you decide the ending of this movie. I like that. Christopher Nolan does it a lot, and I have enjoyed every time he does that. So when Olivia Wilde does that to you at the end of this movie, I'm not upset with that, but there are a lot of unanswered questions, and unfortunately, I can't ask any of them in this spoiler-free review. So I'll just say that my dislike is walking away from the movie. Yes, I'm still thinking about it the next day, and that's a great feeling. But a lot of the things I'm thinking about are, well, if this happened, then what about this? And if this, then this, and this, then this, and this, then this. And I just find myself scratching my head going, maybe 30 more minutes to clear those things up. Maybe not such an ambiguous ending. Like, an ambiguous ending is fine, but there were so many things on the table that were just completely unanswered. And I have to walk away going, well, there will never be a sequel, because even if they were going to make a sequel, this cast will never sign up for one. So Don't Worry Darling is all we're getting. Maybe on repeat viewings, I'll come to terms with those unanswered questions. I'll just say, okay, I didn't need to know those things. I've got what I have in this movie, and that's enough. But as of right now, as of 24 hours later, when I'm still thinking about it, I would love for someone to answer those questions. Even if the director did a Q&A, if she was just like, hey, here's those questions you have, here's the answers to those questions, I would be very happy. Like, I don't know, but a movie that does that, I say that's a dislike for this movie, but a movie that can do that is a good movie in and of itself, because it keeps you thinking about the movie and makes you want to watch it again, which a lot of movies don't do. Overall, I had a really fun time with this movie, and I'll tell you what, one thing I was thinking about when I was making this review is I wish I still had some sort of a rating system. I don't miss the rating system. I think the rating system can be kind of toxic, because if I were to go A through F on this and I was to give this a B plus or an A plus or an A, what does that mean to me versus what it means to you? And then you start getting viewers that are just there for the rating. And if I was to say this movie was an A plus, they would be like, oh my God, you put this movie next to Citizen Kane? And I'd be like, Well, no, I just really liked this movie. Or if I was to go 1 out of 5 stars and I was to give this 1 star, and they'd be like, oh, so this is like Plan 9 from outer space. But like, well, no, I just didn't really like this movie. You get the idea. So I've kind of gotten away from a rating system. My original rating system was like a meme rating system because the memes don't matter and neither do the ratings. So I was thinking about maybe going back to something like that. But again, I think that's something that's a positive for this movie because it makes me want to rate a movie again based on what I saw here. Like, it's just, it brings that out of me. Like, I want to tell people this movie was so good. This movie was so interesting that I want to give it a grade. I want to give it a rating. But as it stands, I don't really have a rating system. But I posed as a question for you guys. If you want to see a rating system, come back to my videos, whether it's a meme rating system or just stars or A through F grade. Well, let me know in the comment section down below. I'd love to know your thoughts. And that's my movie review for Don't Worry Darling. If you enjoyed this movie review, hit the like button. If you want to share this review with your friends, make sure that by hitting the share button. The comment section is down there. I've already asked you guys a couple of questions. I would really like some interaction with you guys, so feel free to answer those questions. And finally, if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you do that by hitting the subscribe button. I've got a lot of content on my channel, and we are a week away from the scariest time of the year where I will have several movie reviews for you guys involving very terrifying movies. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful to be back in New York. I just popped very quickly to Venice to spit on Chris Pine.